this is Ian Berry, and welcome to another Spark a Nation conversation. For those of you that don't know or don't remember, a Spark a Nation is a spark that ignites passion, that leads to action, that changes what's normal. And with me today are Simon Collier and Allan Parker, two long-standing members of the Wise Leaders community. And today we're actually in the final episode in this time slot. There's another one this evening, but of the We Need to Talk program. And it's interesting how when We Need to Talk came about, it became my signature program for a while, but the take-up of it wasn't what I expected, because I got this from feedback. Most people still saw the We Need to Talk expression as a negative and not a positive.
Oh, wow.
And so they didn't register, didn't sign up, because they felt it was a negative, not a positive, even though I tried my best to portray it as a positive. And Allan, you signed up pretty much straight away when you heard the phrase, as did a couple of others.
Yeah.
But most people saw it as a negative and therefore were frightened by it. And so that's why it's evolved to the art of wise conversations rather than We Need to Talk. The principles are the same and the process we're going through is the same. But when I came across, I hope you can read the quote on the whiteboard behind my right shoulder. It says, "Rules aren't necessarily sacred, but principles are."
And who was that from?
That's Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Oh, it is. Right.
And as I read that a long time ago, but it came to my mind freshly recently, I thought, isn't it interesting how a lot of folk are stuck with rules, either self or other people imposed, and we've let other people impose on them, rather than following principles. And I was saying and explaining this to a new client who was a referral from a very old, long-standing client. And so, there's already a trust factor with me and the new client. But she was asking me, what is it that, I know what you do, but can you capture it in a sentence? And I said, look, I can, but it's difficult. And I said, it's probably two sentences. Number one, I'm a teacher of proven principles. And number two, I help people to get clear about what's possible and then have conversations that underpin the turning of possibility into reality. And the models that I've shared with you in the blog posts that, and for those of you watching this recording, I'll put those links to those posts underneath the video, are really a conceptual framework that has now evolved to a framework that I'm going to share with you guys here today and have a conversation about, because I'm reimagining leadership. I think traditional leadership is dead. I think people are sick and tired of being misled, misheard, misrepresented. And that's coming from political leaders, religious leaders, business leaders, doesn't seem to matter. And so now we have a crisis of credibility that's become a very dark cloud over leadership. And so I've been reimagining it. And the first two models that we look at are part of that process. And so here's the first one, just to sort of jog your memory. I called it leadership citizenship because I think a lot of leaders out there have forgotten that they're citizens of the world. Nationalism has become a thing that's a danger to all of us. And so I wanted to go down this path of looking at leadership from being a citizen point of view, and to say that if we're to reimagine leadership and to reinvent it, we need to be about regeneration, both regeneration of ourselves, but also the regeneration of our planet. And that there are some things that we can do, and I address them as influence, inspiration, insight, farsight, and impact as being what real leaders do. Interesting, I may bring back at my busiest period as a professional speaker, probably between 2002 and 2012. So in that 10-year period, my most popular speaking title was "What Real Leaders Do and Fake Ones Don't." And I gave over 1,000 presentations on that topic. Some of them, workshops, but also keynotes and so on. And I might revisit that title, because it seems like we need to focus on what is it that real leaders do that fake ones don't. So, gentlemen, this is the first sort of part of what's going to be a 3-piece conversation. What are your feelings and thoughts?
I've been aligned with your idea of leadership's run its course, and we've discussed previously, Ian, my whole work really is about creating partnership.
Yes.
As opposed to leadership.
Yes. You and I are very much on the same. When you see,
yeah.
I don't think you've seen the new model yet, but when you see it, you'll see partnerships is very much a part of that.
Yeah.
And I've reached a view that leadership has to be about consensus building.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think aligns with your work.
Yeah, precisely. And that people need to understand what consensus means.
Yep.
A lot of people think consensus means agreement.
Yes.
And consensus, the base of the word is consent.
Correct. Yes, indeed.
It is to give consent and participate in, irrespective of whether my personal view is that or not.
Yes.
But because it's in the best interest of everybody, I'll put my own need aside.
Yes.
Is really what consensus is. And most people don't understand that.
No, and that takes a strong self-leadership.
Yeah.
And particularly recognizing self-leadership in the service of others.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. That I'm actually making the community or the constituency that I am part of, or represent, or both, more important than my own self-interest or my own confirmational bias tendency.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly powerful, but also incredibly hard to do.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get to this, but it takes an incredible level of self-awareness and self-leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes a real understanding of what ego is and ego is not.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your feelings and thoughts, Simon?
Yeah, I think that was pretty telling, that you've got to be prepared to say you're wrong, or your way might not be the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just looking at the on-screen diagram there, or model, I reckon there's a spot for the word generation somewhere.
Yes.
And then perhaps you can expand, Ian, why regeneration sits outside the circle.
Oh, well done.
No. It was actually Allan's suggestion.
Yeah.
Going back in a previous conversation, I don't know whether you recall that.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as Simon said it, I flashed back.
And it could be regeneration / generation.
Yeah.
I think so many people, Simon, is the reason that I chose regeneration, and agree with Allan that it's outside the circle, because it's kind of it's the bigger picture kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's bigger than all the other things. Yeah. But it's like, our planet has taken such a battering from man's, and it's mostly men's stupidity, that it needs time to regenerate. And you've only got recently just around my neighbourhood here, there's been a lot of, burning off so that we don't have catastrophic fires and how quickly nature regenerates after the it's been burnt.
Yeah.
Of course, the First Nations people have known this for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And regularly did, burning. I mean, it's just a quick example. You've only got to look in your own garden, how quickly, if a flower or a plant or something is damaged, how quickly it can regenerate if it's given the proper care. But I also think that, as humans, we are worn out by bad leadership.
Yeah.
We're just stuffed. We're sick of it. And so therefore we need to regenerate as well as human beings. I'm incredibly, that's one of the reasons why Farsight, features. It's the ability to fly like an eagle and get above everything and see things, up there in the song says, where the world's below and the clear winds blow.
Yeah.
And yet we don't seem to have, Farsight. Here in Australia, we just committed to 400 billion to buy submarines, but we can't get the problems that are facing us today right.
Yeah.
We've got, how ridiculous that in a country like Australia, we've got people living in poverty.
Mm.
I mean, what the hell is going on with leadership? And so, but maybe because regeneration can maybe feel like a negative, and I don't mean it in a negative way. So maybe it's regeneration/generation.
Yeah. Because
we sure as heck need new ideas.
Yeah.
All right, let's just look at. Sorry, you go ahead, Allan.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I'm just wondering if I've got a thought going on, but I think it might be a rabbit hole.
We're happy to go down rabbit holes if they're Alice in Wonderland rabbit holes.
I'm involved with a project at the minute with a few people who are very well informed in environmental and climate science. And we're exploring the need to talk about biogenesis.
Yes, yeah.
And there's there's generation, there's regenerate, and there's biogenesis. And biogenesis is the fact that I can go to the gym and actually build new muscle cells that don't exist. A bird will sit in a tree and drop its droppings, and a month later a rainstorm will occur and a plant will grow. My partner had a skin cancer cut out a couple of weeks ago, and I've been watching the progress of it. And it looked quite nasty and like a big hole with stitches in it.
Mm.
And then within 2 weeks, there's no stitches. And somehow or other, magically, new cells have come together to create the healing process. Yeah. And Ian, they knew where to go to meet each other, to connect up, to create the healing process.
Yeah.
Now, we in lay terms call that healing, but it's actually a stimulation. It's an event or a phenomena that caused new cells to be born and create a new set of situations.
Yeah.
And
sometimes
we consider enough the ability to create something. We're so involved in solving problems instead of co-creating.
Yeah, exactly what I was about to say. Yep.
And I think it's as Simon suggests, it is monitoring and being grateful for the generation and the importance of regeneration, because we do get things wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And regenerating is not that we got it wrong, but we did it one way and there were 3 other ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
True. And I think part of this, you know, we are in the greatest opportunity for co-creation ever in history.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're in an age of collaboration. Of course, you know, this is why politics doesn't work as effectively as it could, because they're competing with one another instead of collaborating.
Yeah.
The idea, the very idea that we have an opposition in Westminster politics is the stupidest thing you can think about in the 21st century.
I find it staggering. Yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable that we're still on that path when we should be collaborating and co-creating.
Yeah.
But we've got, you know, the opposition, particularly the Conservatives, in my opinion, they're so locked into their ideologies that they can't think outside the old box.
Yeah. Yeah.
A second part of this, when I suggested that we need to have a conversation and to reimagine leadership, I'll just put that one away for a moment, was this idea, just close a couple of things here, that we needed to relook at these 3 things, which was the second article that I had you read. And just a reminder, folks that are watching this, the links below this video. I think we've misjudged, misrepresented, bungled, screwed up, whatever you want to say, these 3 things. Your thoughts, gentlemen?
So integrity comes before authority, and then accountability happens after the fact. Is that
Pretty much? You can read it however you wish, but yeah, I think integrity is first, regardless. And it's, you know, it's pretty simple. You know, I'm a man of my word. If I say it, you can take it as read. If I say I'm going to do it, I will. And if there's unforeseen circumstances, it means I have to change something, then I'll let you know well in advance. It's not rocket science. And yet we have this double talk all the time. We even had a former cabinet minister in front of a royal commission saying that he couldn't tell the truth because he wanted cabinet solidarity. I mean, I watched that thing, and I just went, I said what out loud. I went, what? Because I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And yet we seem to accept this crap from people.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a guy, what is the guy still doing in Parliament? He's got no integrity.
Yeah.
Therefore, he should be gone. Because people with no integrity can't represent us. And that's the situation we're currently in all over the world. We've got leaders in business, religion, politics, who don't actually represent us. They represent themselves and their own interests. You know, even had part of the Catholic Church refusing compensation for victims of a pedophile, and they waited till the guy died before they did it. I mean, it's outrageous. And yet it doesn't make the headlines. You got to search for that stuff. And, you know, accountability is just basically taking responsibility for the impact that you make. And if you stuff it up, you take responsibility. So this has emerged to what is now a draft 4 of where I'm at in reimagining leadership. And you'll see, Allan, that partnerships is a part of this process.
Yeah. And
I'll make a link to this document available. As I say, it's draft 4 because I'm still going through my feelings and thoughts about it. And in draft 4, I added what you see in red, but these are the explanations for each of the pieces. So I'll give you a minute if you haven't had a chance to look at this. You wouldn't have seen draft 4 because I only wrote it this morning. That's the bits in red. And the other bits were there before. So I'll give you just a moment to. So I'm saying that leadership citizenship has evolved we need to rethink integrity, accountability, and authority. And this is where I'm at with how that might play out.
I'm perhaps struggling a little bit with the power of the word authority.
Yeah.
Going back
Yep.
in the blog post, which I'll just bring up for you. I did have it open just a while ago, so here we go. I quoted in the blog post Richard Merritt, my colleague. Just trying to pick up the piece.
No one can give us authority.
Yes, you see that piece? I'm just trying to find the actual piece, but maybe I didn't have it in that particular article.
Simon, when
there we go, just up above there. So this is Richard's insight. Money is temporary, fragile source of power. Authority is something altogether more difficult to earn and sustain, but infinitely more capable of changing what matters. Nobody can give us authority. It's actually coming from the power derived from a good reputation, power to convince people, the capacity for inspiring trust. That's the quote from the Middle English. Does that help, Simon?
Sorry, I'm just distracted by the dogs. Sorry. They're going to go off.
So right there, Richard's words he's taken that from Middle English. Power derived from a good reputation, power to convince people, the capacity for inspiring trust. That's authority.
So it pretty much gets back to what we were talking about a bit earlier with consent and consensus.
Pretty much. And it helped me to arrive at this place of saying, well, look, human being centered wise conversations are at the heart of this. And what they're about fundamentally is building and sustaining consensus, which, as Allan says, and we perhaps could dive a bit deeper, it's essentially about consent.
Yeah.
It's not agreement. It can be agreement.
Yeah.
I've been talking, as you know, for years. I've called this shared view, that there's always a third alternative. You've got your view and I've got mine, but the power is in ours.
Yeah.
And a lot of that means that by definition, a wise conversation, you enter the room with the willingness to change your mind about something.
Yeah.
Or to let go what might have been previously held dear. The very idea of a wise conversation is that those things are no longer relevant. I'm here willing to have my mind changed by your inspiration. Yeah. I'm willing to shift away from my beliefs and ideologies because of something that you've inspired me. If there's an unwillingness to do that, it's not a wise conversation. That's why, programs like here in Australia, like the Q&A program and, the drum, which I don't mind the drum, but they're really opinion sharing things. They're not wise conversations.
No, they're not.
Because people are not prepared to have their minds changed.
And one person talks at a time.
Yeah.
And is their point of view. It's not even a discussion.
No. And yet both those programs are referred to as conversations.
Yeah.
Well, they're not conversations, in my opinion. They're certainly not wise ones.
And I've not ever seen any participant on the drum, and I do watch it occasionally. I've not ever seen a participant on the drum acknowledge what somebody says and ask them to clarify and confirm what they thought they said.
No,
Ever.
no, there's none of that. There's no checking for message effectiveness.
Yeah.
There's no questioning. There's no clarification. As I say, not a conversation, and yet referred to as a conversation. And I see this, as I'm sure you guys both have as well, that most conversations in the business, in the workplace, are not conversations.
No.
Because you have an unwillingness to change your feelings or your thoughts.
Yeah.
Therefore, it can't be a wise conversation.
Yeah.
Consensus or consent can't be found if there's an unwillingness to change your mind.
Yeah. Simon, I balked at authority as well. And I was just about to bring that up, and the slide changed. And so I was looking and reading the slide, and particularly the red. But in between that, I went back to the circle with authority, and I wrote shared authority equals consensus.
Shared authority
Equals consensus.
Wonderful.
So if you're the one who comes up with the idea, you're the authority at that point. But if I go, oh, Ian, I think if we do X, Y, and Z, I can get that to happen today.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
And once I then take responsibility or accountability for the action, you then afford me the authority to go and do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that might have its place somewhere in this, because I mean, the reason that this is actually draft 4, not draft 3, I'll change that before I send it out. But there's been several conversations, some of which you were involved in the early ones. There's been several conversations where this has evolved to where it is now.
Yeah.
And I've changed my mind as a consequence about some things.
Yeah.
I've also added some things that came from other folk, and I will put an acknowledgement in when we get to the eventuality of this. Probably it's always going to be evolving.
Yeah.
But I love this idea of shared authority equals consensus.
Oh, good. And in the when you mentioned accountability, and then you said in personal language, it's about me keeping my word and honouring my word and letting you know if I'm not going to keep my word, something like that.
Yes.
When you wrote that, I wrote quality delivery, on time in spec.
Yep.
Is that was me putting your integrity and your accountability together into action that was measurable.
Yes. Yes, I like that.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yes, and one of my own evolutions in becoming a teacher of this is that I'm inspired to change my mind or change my view or nuance or modify something as a consequence of the conversation. And so I'm getting as much out of the conversations as everyone else.
Mm. And I don't know about you guys, but I go back to your keeping your word is just the positive impact of that and the negative ripple effect of it are both profound and
Yes.
significant and common. Yeah.
Yes, I was blessed in my early childhood. My father used to say that if you tell the truth, you'll never have to remember anything.
Yes, it improves your memory. Yeah.
And I've not knowingly broken my word ever.
Yeah. Yeah. No way. Pretty tight on that one myself.
And I know that, you know, it has been the key to, you know, my personal joy and professional success.
Yeah.
What else is sort of digging in and
Yeah,
prompting
say-
you in this.
yeah, I would say that citizenship almost equals shared authority, doesn't it?
Yeah,
You
lovely.
could put a
Lovely.
big equals sign between the two of them, I reckon.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that, Simon. Yes, indeed. It's probably citizenship equals shared authority, which equals consensus.
yeah,
Oof, that's a cracker, that one.
that's a nice one. Ooh.
Yeah.
I think, and of course, this is really the challenge, isn't it? I noticed, I think it was yesterday, that the Iranian government has pardoned the protesters, if I heard it correctly. And although that's probably a political maneuver, it's got to be a good thing. Because one of the challenges with the political dynamics of things is that a lot of people feel powerless. There isn't a shared authority. This, of course, is the power of, and these are happening more and more, citizens' councils, people coming together, usually elected to be a member of the council by lottery, and then coming up with something. Probably the greatest example that comes to my mind, referenced in the Citizens book by John Alexander, was where a Citizens Council came together and put forward a proposition about abortion, which defeated the Catholic Church and it actually became law. And this is in Ireland. So there is lots of examples where citizens are coming together to change things. But I think overall, in the crisis points, both in politics and in business, there is a lack of shared authority. First of all, there's a lack of people feeling that they're citizens, global citizens. There's a lack of shared authority, and therefore there's a lack of consensus.
Yeah.
So what can we do about this?
Yeah, you've used the political analogy, at different levels, different countries, etc., a few times, but it's definitely true in business.
Absolutely.
Because there's just this competitiveness to come up with the answer first or come up with the best way, the fastest.
Yes.
And
then be attached to it.
Yeah, and a lot of that's all about impressing people.
Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely. I would say that that integrity, accountability, authority, citizenship, shared authority, consensus, they're a bigger problem in business than they are anywhere. In my view, corporations rule the world and politicians do what the corporations tell them to do.
Yeah. And what I see is what it tends to do. It tends to suppress a lot of individuals from expressing what they want to say.
Indeed. The great example recently is Gary Lineker in the BBC. He expressed a view that I think a lot of people hold, that the government's got it wrong, and he was shut down and taken off air. He's since been reinstated. But yeah, there's a lot of, we're supposed to live in a world of free speech, but that was an example of not being able to freely express your views. What can we do, guys? What can we, I'm in my own world, I'm committed to influencing and inspiring and impacting positively and productively the people within my circles of influence.
Yeah.
I can't change the world, but I can change my part of the world, or I can influence. I can inspire, I can impact, I can help people within my circle of influence. And hopefully that then becomes a ripple effect and spreads, to the bigger world. And I think that's what citizenship does. If I can, and you can do this yourself, if we can, in our own neighborhoods, our own circles of influence, if we can bring a place, a team, a cohort, a small group of people to a citizenship shared authority consensus, we've done something wonderful that would have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
I think I think all three of us are doing this, but what maybe, where can we point people?
I asked a fellow worker yesterday, do you mind if I ask you a question? Was how I started.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer it if you don't want to.
Nice place to start.
But I just said, when are you at your best?
Great question.
Yeah, wonderful.
And the person who's fairly experienced said, I've never been asked that before.
Which in itself says a lot of things, but it's two great questions.
And I don't need to share what the answer was and all of that part of it, but
it's a wonderful question, though. I think two great questions. Do you mind if I ask you a question? That's the first piece. Reminds me a bit of the AA technique that I teach, Simon, where if something's gone wrong, to avoid the shame and blame that's typical, I give people 4 questions. Number 1 is, what happened? Because it's not about who did it. It's more about what happened. And then the second question is, how do we get back on track? Third question is there anything that I can do to help you? And then a fourth question, anything else? I'll put a link. I've done a little video demonstrating that technique, so I'll put a link to that under this video. But that's just another simple technique like yours, Simon. Simple yet profound.
Yeah.
Definitely apply that one you just mentioned to parenting too.
Yes, yes, indeed. Or neighbourhood disputes.
Yeah. Yep.
Anything really. But yeah, I think so. They're 2 simple, really practical yet profound ways that we can help people.
Yeah. Simon, I actually don't know your last name. Can you tell me your last name?
Yeah, Collier, Collier.
With your permission, I'm managing a fairly large, well, it was a negotiation, it's now a crisis. And I'd like to use those 2 questions with each of the people in the conflict and mention your name if that's okay with you.
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
If it's going to help.
When are you at your best? Boy, oh boy, that's a knockout.
Which has to be such a question that we can ask in lots of situations, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm contemplating my own answers to the question. I mean, part of it is when I'm involved in conversations like this, because I take away inspiration that leads to, me being better.
Yeah.
One of the ongoing conversations I have with my wife, Carol, is about, being satisfied with who we are and accepting ourselves as a one-of-a-kind human being, but at the same time, always looking to be better.
Yeah.
It's not discounting that we're a special, one-of-a-kind, unique human being, but the paradox is that we can probably always be better. There's a little nuance, there's a little modification, whatever it is. I go away from these conversations with often a nuance or a modification to my way of being that adds value to, what's already in place. This is, of course, the integration path. We implement something, we go through a period of introspection to see what we learned, and then we integrate what we learned with what's already going well. That's integration. And it's a step, well, the 3 steps really: implementation, introspection, and integration are often missed following these sort of conversations. We sort of, a lot of people make lots of notes and then do nothing. What else, gentlemen? We've got just a few minutes before we go. There's already been a lot of profound stuff. I'm in gratitude to you both.
I'm Simon, just so you're aware, I'm a linguist, and every time somebody says something that captures my attention, my brain then wants to build on it and either expand it out or drill down into concrete, doable descriptors, or explore where it could go or be applied. And I've written your 2 questions and highlighted them, put a circle around it, and then I've been playing with it since then. And in relation to this group that I'm working with, and I've added a new question. Once I've asked them individually, I've added the question of, when are we at our best?
Oh, great. Yep.
Yes, great question.
And followed by, how do we spend more time and energy in that? And how do we expand from it?
Wonderful. One of the aspects of real leadership.
Can I say thank you? You've partly designed my next meeting with them.
Indeed. You're giving me more questions to add to the quiver. One of the aspects of real leadership is the ability to ask great questions.
Yeah.
The challenge that I see happening all over the place is that we've got strife because we're asking the wrong questions, therefore we're getting the wrong answers.
Yeah. And to loop back to my earlier comment about biogenesis, what you've just done inside my head, Simon, is produced biogenesis. Because those questions I've never asked before, so the brain actually has to produce new neurons to come up with them and ask them. So that stimulated neurons in my brain that weren't activated. Yeah. And I think it's that extraordinary potential that becomes available in quality conversation. Yeah. Where I don't come back to your question and suggest that it be changed or modified or feel uncomfortable that you've come up with it and I haven't, and you're getting the recognition and I'm not, which I'm sure happens in lots of meetings that we spend time in. But the biogenesis is when I go, wow, that's a beautiful question. And my linguist went straight to best. And best in linguistics is called a comparator. And comparators are notorious for creating competition. However, when you make it, and this goes back to Ian's early comments about the importance of reflection, when you actually ask the question, when are you at your best? There is nobody else involved in that. So there's no competition. That's why linguistically, I just went, oh, that's exquisite use of language, because it causes the person to compare how they are when they're not at their best and when they are at their best and where that is. So it creates internal alignment, not external competition.
Yes, wonderful turn of phrase, internal alignment, not external competition.
Does that make sense, Simon?
Yeah. And yeah, just thinking it through a bit more. As I said, I only pulled that one out yesterday. I don't know how, but
Neurogenesis.
I think there's got to be, when you're talking that through that discussion with the person or with a group or whatever, there's got to be a strong filter about not going to where you're not your best.
Yes.
Too much.
Yes.
It's perhaps realizing it, but not letting the conversation go that way. It's got to be on the positive.
Yeah. And
Indeed. I mean, I think we've unearthed possibility this morning, gentlemen, but we've also done something that I think is incredibly powerful, and that is there's been an honouring. And that uplifts all of our spirits, doesn't it? When we don't want to change something that someone else has said, we rather honour what they have said, and then take that on board in our own way. I think there's something powerful about that, and it brings up for me this idea that I introduced in the my very first book. Actually, was called Increasing Profits Without Hurting People. And I talked about the idea of competing with yourself and collaborating with others. Because I think it's okay to compete with ourselves.
Yeah.
But we then got to collaborate with other people. And being asked this question, when you are at your best, and then the follow-up, when are we at our best, which I think is a wonderful question for teams or cohorts. And how do we, move on and create energy that expands that? These are all honouring things.
Ian, have you come across Alfie Kohn's, Kohn, Alfie Kohn's book? And it is titled Why We Lose in Our Race to Win.
Why We Lose in Our Race to Win.
Yeah.
I haven't come across that, no.
That's the subtitle. Oh, No Contest.
No Contest.
And then subtitle, Why We Lose in Our Race to Win. And it's extremely aligned to what you just said.
I'll get hold of that book.
In compete with self and collaborate with others.
Yes.
And increasing profit and do no harm. Yeah.
Yes. Which really comes back, because that's the compete with yourself, collaborate with others is a self-leadership.
Yeah.
Exercise. It's about continually reflecting on our intentions, feelings, thoughts, actions, and behaviours.
Yeah.
And modifying and nuancing or changing them when it's appropriate to do so.
Yeah.
Is there anything else before we go, gents?
No, I think that's been extraordinary, really. Yeah.
Well, I wonder how many people, going back to my start question, and thank you for your acknowledgement there, how many people would say I'm at my best when we put people before numbers?
Yeah.
It's a good answer, but yeah, the answer's better than it used to be. But it's still the focus of majority. When I first started doing this work 30 years plus ago, I don't think there was too many people who weren't on the profit trail. But there's that putting people before profits. There's now an incredible number of businesses that do that. We've got a ways to go before it's a majority, though, Simon.
Yeah.
But I've seen lots of change in that time frame, and that's Allan and I, we've been at this for just over a generation, so we have seen generational
or two.
We have seen generational change, and I think the folks in their 30s now have got this. They've got this by the scruff of the neck.
Yeah.
And so once all these profit-driven, greedy people die, there's a new chance. And I think the younger generation are going to grasp it.
Yep.
All righty, folks. Greatly appreciative of this conversation and its outcomes. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Can I say what a joy that was? And I had a meeting with a very large client that was booked for 15 minutes ago, and they text me and said that they can't go until 15:15, so I could stay the whole time. So I just I thank you both and thank the universe.
Indeed. Wonderful. We'll see you next time.
Will. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Ian.
Wonderful hour. Thank you.